This podcast is brought to you in part by Live Atom. Live Atom is a Rochester-based business that helps startups grow online by generating more leads. You can find out more about them by heading over to their website at liveatom.com. That's liveatom.com. I'm Amanda Leitner, and welcome to Rochester Rising, where we amplify the stories of Rochester entrepreneurs. Welcome to episode 137 of the podcast today. So for today's podcast, we got to go on the road to do a recording at the brand new NerdinOut location on 2nd Street Southwest. We got to chat with Brad Vigesaa of NerdinOut about a lot of topics. So in case you haven't heard of NerdinOut, it's based on a philosophy that involves really just being so involved in one thing at that moment, whether it's podcasting or comic books or gaming, really anything that you're really into at that moment is NerdinOut. NerdinOut is a retail store in Rochester. They buy, sell, and trade vintage and modern comics, toys, video games, and more. So on the podcast today, we talk with Brad about NerdinOut, their move from a location on Elton Hills to their new location on 2nd Street Southwest, which had their grand opening on June 8th, which we talk about in the podcast. We talk about the value of building community and the lessons Brad learned from past experiences that's allowing him to exponentially scale NerdinOut. All right, so now on to the podcast with Brad and NerdinOut. I'll start by asking you about your background, and what was your business experience like before coming in and starting NerdinOut here?
Sure. So before I actually started NerdinOut with Jake, so Jake is my business partner.
Okay.
And before we started it, I was actually in sales. I've been in sales since I've been 20. So I did car sales, I did retail, I went to charter business and did inbound sales, and then also got back into the car business. So that's where I finished up actually before I took a leap and came here, is basically what it was. So I've been in sales some way, shape, or form for about 20 years now.
Yeah. So you did the most difficult part of any entrepreneurial journey, because I think the thing most entrepreneurs hate is selling. So you already knew how to do that before coming in.
And I love it. I love this. I love customer service. I love making people happy. That's honestly one of those things. It's what I've learned over the term is it's just about building that experience rather than just selling.
Well, that's the thing, and that's what I've learned, because I've been trying to get more comfortable with selling, and it's not like it's about meeting a need. Yeah. And once I started to think about it that way, I'm like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and you see, like you said, you do podcasting. I've done it, and I listen to a lot of Gary Vee. And I think the one thing I've learned along the way is that people don't really want to be sold anymore. If you think about it, right? Like, I take it into experience. I worked at Champ Sports for a long time, and the first thing we'd always have to ask people is, hey, welcome to Champ Sports. What brings you in today? Or what are you looking for? And the first thing that you do is you put up that guard, and you don't even realize it, but it's just a deflector that you go, just looking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's because you feel like you're going to be sold.
Right.
And it's not about selling. It's about meeting their needs and just creating that experience to where they want to keep coming back.
Yeah.
Just letting them know you're there for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a hard lesson to learn, though.
It can be, and you can stumble a lot of times. And that's the best thing about sales, though, is you have so many roads you get to go down to, and you learn along the way which ones work and which roads aren't working.
Yeah.
So that's the neat thing.
Yep.
Something new every day. I love it. I really do.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So for people who haven't been here before, what's NerdinOut?
So NerdinOut, it started as like a philosophy, right? Because I think a lot of people have a misconception that NerdinOut is like people with glasses that are really nerdy that play Magic the Gathering or just sitting there playing video games. And I like to say as a philosophy, realistically, it's everybody can nerd out. You can nerd out doing a podcast because I feel like it's when you're in your element, or it's a painter that is just so into painting that your only sole focus is that at that point. Nothing else in the world matters, right? So I always feel like when you're doing a podcast or whether you're riding your bike or whatever it is, you're really nerding out because you're so involved in that one thing at that moment that you're just dialed in. And not being in our store, that's our philosophy. What our store is really about is community. We came from a 1,000-square-foot store for 2 years that we were in to where we really couldn't do anything, and we had about a third or a fourth of what we have now. But our store is action figures, video games, board games, card games like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, that type of stuff, where you can come in, comic books, and you can just buy something, pick it up. You can even come to the back of the store and read it if you want to. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah. I will say, when I was here for the grand opening,
Mm-hmm.
I really was never a big game player of any sort, no board games, no video games. I would play them, but it wasn't my thing. But then I saw you had the Star Wars characters walking around, and I have watched all and I enjoy the Star Wars.
Cool.
So I was like, oh my God, there they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're walking around, and you had Vader and R2-D2 over there.
R2-D2, Vader, Jawa, some of the troopers. Yep.
So yeah, that was definitely fun. And it's always kind of intimidating to see stormtroopers walking around. I'm like, oh geez, let's not approach them.
I wish it would have been breakdancing or something.
They were funny though.
Right.
So I would imagine you have a passion for video games and things like this. So what's kind of your journey been like with those kind of products and childhood or even, up till now?
Yeah, I mean, childhood, my parents let me play for a long time during the day. They were busy. So my childhood was video games. I'd come home after school, and I started with Atari and Nintendo, and then going that way. So I was when it was really low 8-bit or bad graphics. I grew up with all the G.I. Joes, the He-Man, everything like that. And it was one of those things where I think the reason that I love seeing kids here and doing this is because this is what brought my imagination out. You really get to have these toys, but when you're so into it again, nerding out, you're creating a battle scene. You're creating a whole new world that really doesn't exist, but it does in your mind. And it just flows that way until someone comes and tells you it's a dinner time,
Yeah.
But that's how I grew up. I grew up in that era. Baseball cards were really popular, collected those. And then as I got into the adult phase, I kind of got out of that. And it came back when I started getting Lego sets again. And what I would do is I would collect them, and then I would resell them later, because they would go into this phase where they call it retired, where you can't get them anymore, and people really they were more sought after, I should say. But that's basically my journey of getting to here.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I feel it's one of those things everyone has some really strong memory growing up that this is just what you did, and I think going back, that whole capturing your imagination and building these whole worlds and journeys of these characters and these things.
And as adults, we work so hard to make the money to do the things that we want to. With our board games, that's why I'm trying to do it, because we used to play board games as kids with our family, or we used to have it with friends, and you kind of grow out of that, and now it's more or less online, right?
Yeah.
You play by yourself. It's a single player. Well, that's what we're trying to accomplish here, is bringing back that system, allowing you one night a week where you could come in and you could pick up one of our board games, or you can bring your own in, and you can bring your friends in here. And it's just a solid place where you guys can have some fun without being judged or anything else.
Yeah, I think that's the note I had here. I can't quite read what my handwriting, but yeah, I was talking with Weird Cards a few weeks ago, and that same thing came up. It's creating, those one-on-one connections and just creating a place for people to come. So what are your thoughts about, creating that space in the community? So what purpose does the store serve for something like that?
I think that you need it anywhere you go, and I think we need it more than ever right now. Just because, like I said, with social media online, you have so many people that either A, can hide behind profiles, or B, just make those profiles and that's their friends, right? We all have a lot of friends, but how many do we have in real life? And how many of those real friends are actually close to us, or does it mean something? And I think this brings us back to that childhood part where you're making those memories, because when you come here and you're playing a board game with people that either you do know or you don't know, you're making those memories. You're going to remember that for a long time, and taking that time, And A, of what you asked, I think it's really big for the community, and B, what we play in that role is what you're sitting in right now. We're in this space right here with 8 tables that people can come in and actually play. So,
yeah. So we really don't have that much just open community space that I'm aware of in Rochester where people just can just come and play like that,
right?
And just hang out.
You do have a couple places, and so here's the thing. I'm going to dive in a little bit more, and I do apologize here, but I get asked a lot, how do we compete against other places in town? There's places called Games and More, and also D6, right? Yeah. And I don't feel like we're trying to compete with them. I don't even feel like we're trying to take business away. if it happens, it happens. You're always going to have that competition wherever you are, right? Realistically, all we're doing is we're giving people another location. Mm-hmm. It's just like high school. It's just like college, just like anywhere else. You get tired of your friends. You get tired of situations and people. So you have another place to go. Or people that lived on the southwest side, instead of traveling all the way to northwest, now you have a location closer to your home to be able to come and actually play at. So there's a lot of places in town that have this. I just don't think they get enough recognition, if that makes sense. And I think that we get this recognition because we've taken something in such a short amount of time and grown it, and we're trying to do so much for the community too, because it's not just like we have this store. We do the parades around town. We do the Comic-Con in town. We do a lot for schools and things like that. So I think that's maybe why we get a little bit more of the recognition, is because we give back a little bit more.
And everything has a different flavor. You know, one or business or one space might fit better for one person, and another person might prefer, another space. And it's all just these little nuances that, there's a space for everything, I think.
Absolutely there is.
So we were talking in the beginning, you were in the Elton Hills area until a few weeks ago.
Right.
And I moved into this bigger space on 2nd Street. So what kind of prompted that move, and how has the new space been received?
What prompted it is we had 1,100 square feet from floor to ceiling of stuff. We had a ton of toys at my house. We had a ton of toys at Jake's house. And then we had a lot of back stock. That's what prompted us to move. This location came up, and it worked out with the building owner that we worked it out right. And, I don't think we would ever thought we'd move into a space this big. And that's the one thing when everybody walks in, that this is huge is what everybody says, and it is. But we still have a lot of backstock. We need to take the time to bring it out, make sure it's marked correctly for everybody, make sure we're doing everything right. So right now we're in this trial run of seeing what people feel of the space, seeing what they think needs to be in here still. The nice thing is it gives us room to grow still. We learned in the first 2 years we were in business that we just ran out of space to grow. It started looking like literally a garage sale at that point, stuff all over the place. This gives us that space to grow, and that's more or less what we're excited for. How it's been received is, I don't know, I can't thank the people of the city enough to be able to be honest with you at this point. Every day is a great day here. We have a lot of people that come in that we may have never had before, or that come from mail. So, as far as it goes, we've been a lot busier. You see a lot more morning traffic.
Yeah.
And you can see us. You couldn't see us before.
Right.
So that's really cool now.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a very visible location.
Absolutely.
For sure. So in regards to commercial space in Rochester, I've heard a lot of mixed things. So in finding this space, did it take a lot of time, or did you think there was, so basically what was the availability in terms of like price, size, location when you were searching for commercial space?
Yeah. Price-wise, it's a scary thing, because when you're a business, you don't know how each year is going to go. And Rochester is obviously growing just like the prices are. So you learn real quick value for money. I don't want to give away what we were able to get this place for, but for what we got this for, we were looking about 3 times smaller also. But we started here, which is funny, moved on, looked at probably about 7 to 12 other spots, it felt like, and then we came back here and were able to work it out. So really happy with not only being able to be here, the location, but also how it turned out as a store.
No, that's awesome. So it's kind of easy to get priced out in the downtown area, and I would consider this to be downtown. It's a good location.
It is. What's funny is it isn't directly downtown of what you'd think is downtown, but it is. It's in that vicinity almost, like a T of how they do it, really.
And you have parking. So
we do have a little parking, yes. That helps. Absolutely.
Yeah, it does help. So I was interested in kind of the team behind NerdinOut and kind of how that interaction goes, and who's helped you build this because it's been about 4 years now, right?
Actually, we're just over the 2-year mark.
Just over the 2-year mark.
Just over the 2-year mark. So we opened June of 2017.
Okay.
The team started as Jake Sharpen and myself.
Okay.
We met because we both ended up playing for the Med City Freeze. And we found out through a Facebook connection that we were both into collecting. So we started the store. Jake took the dive right away and started running the store while I still, because I have a family, I did my normal job and then came and helped out here. And besides that, we have Adam, who is one of our part-timers, who's a star, a rock star here that is great with customers. And, just basically we know he could run the store if we weren't here. We have another part-timer named Ashley, and she's a rock star also. So we were able to grow coming over here by adding her. And then we have 2 people that are on call also in case somebody calls in sick or something happens. But they're the people that help us run this behind the scenes. And anybody else out there that's an entrepreneur that owns something that needs employees understands and appreciates good employees that can help you run a business, because they're hard to find nowadays, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that comment a couple times.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing when you find that like shared connection with someone that's kind of unexpected, and then it just kind of takes off from there.
Right. And I think we have a leg up because this is probably a really fun store to work at, where you may not want to work at a dental office or something unless you're gone to school for so long for that, right? We have that luxury of a lot of people want to work here because of that. It's finding those right people, because not only do you need the passion of what happens here every single day, but our goal is, again, that experience. It's kind of like Disney World or anybody that encompasses that experience. You're not just coming to NerdinOut to buy something. You're coming to NerdinOut for the experience, for the atmosphere, for the community feel. And that's really what we look for when we're hiring somebody. We don't want somebody that just wants to work here because you're going to get a discount off stuff or because you love Pokemon and, So that's the biggest thing I think that I'm really proud of, is that Jake and I really encompass finding the right people to give that experience of being here.
Right. Yes, it's always all about team, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think you talked about this a little, so I knew you had sales and customer service experience, before coming into here. So how were you able to translate kind of your experience before into what you're doing here?
I think what I've been able to bring over is not only, again, the customer service and the sales aspect side of it, but also just the progress of having things in place. Doing what I did, I've had a lot of different experiences being able to know, okay, we need this defined, we need these procedures, we need to be able to do this. And so doing that has not only been able to allow us to have track for employees what to do, but also be a lot more efficient and also make our bottom line go up. So those are the things that I feel I've been able to bring to the table most recently to make sure that we're capitalizing on being able to make the most money we can so that we can do things like this community aspect of it, because in all reality, they're coming in to play for free. They're not doing anything unless they purchase a Red Bull or something like that. So it's realistically just making sure that it's all fine-tuned so that no matter what, you can keep the lights on, because there's a lot of lights in this place. I swear there's over 100.
There are a lot of lights. Yeah, and I think a lot of the times, when people are building things, especially if their first entrepreneurial endeavor, sometimes the customer gets forgotten in that whole process, which seems crazy, but sometimes you just build things thinking there's a need and forgetting to design it for the user.
I agree 100%. And not only that, but it's everyday thing, right? I think not only do we battle with things every day, but you take advantage of a lot of stuff. Like, you'll have a customer walk in that door, and if you're really busy, you may forget to say hi to somebody. Well, I'll be the first one to say I don't want to be sold when I go somewhere, but I like to be acknowledged.
Right.
I like a friendly conversation, even if we're going to be talking about something. So it's just nice knowing that when you walk through these doors, you're going to be greeted. And if you need help, you'll get it. If you don't, there's a lot of stuff to just sit and look at, which is really nice.
Yeah. No, I agree. It is a fun atmosphere to come into. That's for sure.
Awesome.
So now you're in this new space here. So what kind of initiatives or goals should people expect to see from NerdinOut in the next couple months here?
Well, in the next couple months, I think you're going to start seeing more product. I know you'll start seeing more product. You're going to start seeing more comic books. We just added our Nitro Coffee, which is something cool.
And you have Barbies now. You did not have Barbies the first time.
We got a lot of Barbies here lately, yeah. And what we're working on extremely hard right now is the second phase of this store, which is the tactical laser tag that's going to be added here.
Oh, cool.
So we're trying really hard to make that August 1st. We were trying to make it July 1st. We do have a couple hoops to jump through to make sure that it's all up to code and whatnot. But once that opens, I think it's going to take the city by storm, because it's not something that you've ever played, but it's geared more towards adults, because all we have to do here are bars.
Yes.
So we're trying to give you something different to do. And what's nice is it's fitness involved. Just because you are hustling to do it. I sweat head to toe when I played it, so I know everybody else will.
I have never played that before. This sounds like fun. I think that would definitely something new for the city that we don't have. And you do get sucked into that bar scene, and I think there's huge change from what's been. So you grew up in Rochester, right? Or
I'm not originally from Rochester, but I've been here for about 20 years. So
okay,
yeah.
So you've been absorbed into,
the
system.
Yeah.
But even like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, there really, as far as like a cultural scene, there wasn't much. And now you have all these, poetry readings, music, street festivals, lots of stuff going on that really wasn't before.
Yeah, I agree. There really wasn't. And, as I look back, because I lived my 20s, 30s here, and 20s were consumed by bars, basically.
I hear you.
That's what it was to do. 30 started having kids. So that's basically what ends up happening. You have kids, it takes you out of the bars a little bit more. And then you start realizing that for adults, there's not a whole lot to do other than the bars and restaurants. Mm-hmm. Literally, there isn't. And for kids, there isn't a ton to do either, I don't feel. Now we have Air and Sanity. We have a couple places like that, which is really nice. But even things like, with Velocity, with their laser tag, I take my son, for instance, he's 6 years old. He can probably handle it now, but when he was 5, you have a heavy vest and a heavy gun. So what we're introducing for them is Hero Blast. What's really neat about that is it's kind of like an Iron Man-ish type, where it just goes on your hand and you can wear a superhero cape and mask if you want and run around. Not only that, but it's mobile, so if schools want it for fundraisers, they can rent us out. We can bring it right to their school. For birthday parties, we can go to people's homes or wherever, and they can use it to play. So it's really neat, really simple.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. So my last question for you, what's the best way for someone to stay in touch with NerdinOut and learn everything new from your business?
Unfortunately, Facebook. That's where we update it the most. I'm getting more on the handle of the Instagram side of it. We do Instagram also, but Facebook is where you're going to see a lot of our products comes through. You'll also catch, because last year we started a Comic-Con, Rochester's first Comic-Con. You can catch up on all the updates for that. So that's coming up here August 10th and 11th. And we have 8 celebrity guests coming in as of right now from movies, TV shows, which is really, really neat. But yeah, that's something, honestly, that I like to bring that back to the NerdinOut theme, because I think a lot of people, when you think Comic-Con, you think of just like comics, toys, stuff like that. And ours is really the whole encompass of it. There's everything to do there. There's over 70 vendors. Like I said, we bring in celebrity guests. So this year, some of our big ones are Jake the Snake Roberts, old school wrestler. We have Chris Sullivan, who is in Guardians of the Galaxy as Taserface, but he's also in the, I think it's NBC series, This Is Us. Big Sheep
really?
TV. Yeah, he's Toby. So if you've ever seen This Is Us, he plays Toby. We're working on one more star that is not only in This Is Us, but they are also in Shazam, the new movie that came out recently by DC. And then we have other stars that are going to be coming also. So
that sounds super cool.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, even if you're not into that stuff, we had tickets as low as $10. Right now, for kids, they're as low as $10. Okay. For adults, it's $20. But for $20, you get to be there all day, and you get to experience something you don't always experience. A lot of attractions, like the Mystery Machine, cars like that are there, which is just really cool and surreal to be able to do. So, and then sometimes you just get to meet these guests that you'd never come close to.
No.
Like, I just want to walk up to Taserface, shake his hand, and ask him how it was being with all those people. So
yeah, that sounds amazing. And that's in August, right?
August 10th and 11th at the Graham Arena. We do have tickets on sale here and then also on the Comic-Con website. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, well, that was my last question. Thanks for doing this today. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. This is fun.
Thanks so much to Brad for being on the podcast today. You can find out more about NerdinOut by visiting them at their 2nd Street locations, or you can find links to their website and social media in our show notes. So if you liked this podcast, you can head over to our website at rochesterrising.org to see more stories about entrepreneurship and innovation in Rochester, Minnesota. You can find us as well on our podcast, anywhere you consume podcast content. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter under the handle @RochesterRising. We're on YouTube as well, and on Instagram under the handle @RochesterRising_MN. So also we have our next communication session focused on mental health for entrepreneurs coming up next week. It'll take place Thursday, July 25th at 5:30 p.m. at Collider Coworking. So this communication session is a safe space to communicate mental wellness challenges with the goal to help create a community of support for Rochester entrepreneurs. You can find more information about that event on our website, on our Facebook events page, or you can find it in the links in our show notes. That's a wrap for the podcast today. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast wherever you consume your podcast content so that you never miss a story of entrepreneurship and innovation coming out of Rochester, Minnesota. We'll see you here next week with a brand new story.